everybody, it is your bestie realtor Olivia, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Olivia Woods and I'm a realtor in Florida. I talk about all kinds of things on this channel related to real estate and savings and finance and all of that. I would like to eventually branch out in the future and do different kinds of content and just life stuff in general, but today's video is going to be for my home buyers, and specifically my first-time home buyers. Today we're going to be talking about out-of-pocket expenses and things you'll need to account for in your savings whenever you're buying a house for the first time, or if it's not your first time buying a home, it's just been a while and you may need a bit of a refresher on things you're going to need to pay for. I got you. Without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and jump into the video. I would definitely advise before I get started that you have a notepad and like a pencil or a pen somewhere and you're actively taking notes as I'm speaking, because I know if you're a first-time home buyer, all of these things are definitely going to apply to you, and you're going to want to make sure that you are accounting for everything when you're budgeting your expenses for buying a home. And so that way you have a little list to refer to real quick when you're trying to get your finances together. The very first thing on my list is going to be your earnest money deposit. You're going to see this on the very first page of the contract whenever you're a realtor and you fill out an offer. And once your offer gets accepted by the seller, you'll be required to give them an earnest money deposit. This is usually held by a third party. An escrow agent will keep record of this, and they'll also have a copy of your contract so they can analyze it and make sure that both parties are properly executing the contract like they're supposed to be. And so usually this earnest money deposit is around 1% if you're using financing. So for just some quick math, if you put an offer in on a home and the purchase price is going to be $180,000, then you're going to want to make sure that you put down at least $1,800 for the earnest money deposit. Now it can be less, it can be more. That's going to be that can be negotiated between you and the seller, or rather your realtor and the seller's realtor, if you want to put down less or if you want to put down more. There is no exact amount that an earnest money deposit has to be, but just in my experience, usually 1% is standard if you're using financing. And this deposit, it's not just for nothing. It's not just money that just has to be held somewhere for no reason. It does go towards the purchase of the home, and so you're going to end up paying this money regardless, but it's just a little bit of money up front that's going to be held by a third party to make sure that both parties are properly executing the contract. So for example, you have an inspection period, typically 10 to 15 days, unless you waive the inspection period, but don't waive your inspection period. And so let's say you're within your 10-day period, and within 5 days you get the inspection back on the home, and you find some things that you don't really want to repair and the seller doesn't want to repair them, or they're just major things that just make it a no for you, and you decide you want to pull out of the contract and cancel. As long as you are within your inspection period, then you will get that deposit back. And so that's how that would work. And you would contact have your realtor contact the title company, and you would submit the paperwork to them, and then you would get that deposit back. Or, hopefully everything goes well with the process like we're hoping for, and you get to that closing table, then that $1,800 will go towards your purchase of the home. Now, number 2 is your inspection. So home inspections can vary in price depending on who you go with. Some inspectors are a little bit more affordable and some are a little bit more pricey than others. Typically in my area, I see between $300 and $500 for a home inspection. This can also include a 4-point inspection, which you're going to need to submit for your insurance. And so, yeah, between $300 and $500 is what you should usually budget for a home inspection. If they're a good inspector, they're gonna take pictures. They're gonna take a lot of detailed notes. They're gonna look at your roof. They're gonna look at your major systems, your plumbing, your air conditioning, your electrical. If there's anything that they notice is going to need to be repaired, if there's any wood rot, if there's any termite damage, if there's any appliances that aren't working, if there's any leaks, they're going to tell you all that. So that's what you are paying them for. So you want to make sure you go with a good, reliable home inspector who's going to give you a very detailed report. Second is going to be your WDO inspection. And WDO, if you don't know, stands for wood destroying organisms. So it's not just termites, it can be other wood destroying organisms, but it's basically what it sounds like. They're going to go and inspect your home for any wood destroying organisms, and they're either going to give you a clean report that, you know, they didn't find any WDOs, or they're going to say we did find some damage, and, you know, this is going to need to be done X, Y, and Z before we can give you a clean WDO report. So that's pretty simple, and usually those can be between, I've seen as low as $100 and as expensive as like $300, and it's just like the home inspection. It can be a little bit less, it can be a little bit more, just depending on who you go with. And another thing that I've run into with getting a WDO is if it's a home that is off grade and there's a crawl space under the home, sometimes you may have to go, you may be limited with who you can choose to do your WDO. It's usually pest control companies that do this, but if the crawl space is too low and there's too little clearance for them to get under the house and observe under there and check and do a WDO inspection, then you may have to keep calling around until you can find a company that can do it. I have run into that issue recently with one of my clients. And so that is something you're going to want to keep in mind if you are buying a home that is off grade. And I do want to kind of stress the importance of you doing these things and calling around and shopping around, because typically the buyer is paying for these things. You're going to be paying for your own inspections, and so you want to make sure that you get a good price, but also that you find an inspector that you're comfortable with and that has good reviews, and that you're confident is going to give you a well-informed opinion of the home that you're looking to buy. Your realtor can give you some recommendations and some references as to people that are best to use in your area, but it is ultimately up to you to call and schedule these inspections and to get things done. And so you want to make sure that you're staying on top of it and that you don't waste time, because like I said, you do have as many days as you have outlined in the contract to get the inspection. So you don't have forever or as long as you just want to take to get things done. Also, one of the biggest ones is going to be the appraisal. You're going to have to get an appraisal if you're using financing. The bank is not going to loan you money for a house until they know that it's worth the amount that you're asking to borrow. And typically I've seen that to be between $400 and $500. It can definitely be more than that. It just depends on the lender that you're using and what area you're in. And it's not going to be like the home inspection and the 4-point and the WDO where you're shopping around and you call someone's company and say, "Hi, my name is Olyvia. I'm looking to get an inspection on this property," and you pay for it and they go out and do the inspection. With an appraisal, you're still going to pay for it, but the bank's going to hire an appraiser, and you usually won't have their contact information, or you won't usually be directly in contact with them. So just know that that's how that's going to work. The bank is going to order the appraisal and you will pay for it. Now, of course, you can definitely have the seller reimburse you for those things if that's something that you've put into the contract, but if not, just plan to have $400 to $500 to pay for that appraisal fee. Stay with me, we are almost done with the list. Now we have repairs, and repairs aren't gonna have to apply to everyone. Like, for example, if you're buying a new construction property, hopefully you're not gonna have to make any repairs at all, or if any, you know, it should be very little. Or if you're buying a property that's being advertised as turnkey and you shouldn't have to do anything to it and it's not a fixer-upper. However, on the other hand, if you are buying a home that is a resale, meaning it's not new construction, then you may have some repairs that are going to come up. And so you have to have your agent work with the seller's agent and figure out what things you're willing to pay for as far as repairs, or what things the seller is going to pay for as far as repairs. And sometimes these things are outlined in the contract. Like, for example, you could have your agent put in the contract that you're requesting up to $1,000 in repairs, or that you're not requesting any money for repairs. So that is gonna vary case by case. But, like, for example, if there's some electrical issues, let's say the home has to be completely rewired and it's gonna cost around $10,000, then you and the seller could, you know, one solution could be that you guys decide to split the costs, or the seller pays out of pocket for it completely, or if you have the money, you pay for it and the seller reimburses you at closing. There's so many different options and ways you can go about doing that. For example, like if you have a home that has peeling paint and it's built before 1978, and so there is that lead paint disclosure that's required, and the appraiser says, hey, you need to cover up this peeling paint, that could be a really easy fix or easy repair. You could either do it yourself, or you could hire someone to go out there and just repaint over those areas where the paint's peeling. So repairs, I don't have an exact amount that I can give you as far as how much to budget for repairs. All I can tell you is just be prepared and try and have some extra money in your budget for repairs, or hopefully you have a great realtor that can negotiate these things with the seller and can have it to where you have to pay as little as possible for repairs on the home, especially since you haven't closed on it and you don't own it yet. Now we have your down payment, and for most people this is going to be the most expensive upfront cost. And your down payment, not everyone's going to be required to have a down payment. Like for example, I had a conventional loan, and the program that I used, I did not have to put down a down payment. But again, the fees that we discussed at the beginning of the video, obviously I still had to pay something, and I still had to pay my closing costs, which were just short of $5,000, and that doesn't even include all my inspection fees and the appraisal fee and all of that. So keep in mind, just because you don't have a down payment doesn't mean that you still won't have to pay something. You're gonna have to spend at least a few $100s out of pocket before you get to the closing table. And so there are programs out there, like I said, where you don't have to pay a down payment, but those are also going to be dependent on your credit score. And usually if you have a little bit of a lower credit score, then you may be required to put down a little bit more money for your down payment. Now, if it's a conventional loan, typically at least 5% is required. So again, easy math. If it's a $100,000 house, we're looking at a $5,000 down payment. And if you're using an FHA loan, which is usually a minimum of 3.5%, if it's a $100,000 house, that's $3,500. And last, we have closing costs. Now, I save closing costs for last because it's not uncommon for buyers to get their closing costs reimbursed or covered by the sellers. And so you're not always going to be responsible for your closing costs, but you don't want to count on that or depend on that, because again, if it's not in your contract and you don't ask for closing costs to be paid for, then you will be required to pay that. And also, being in a seller's market, things are slowing down a little bit more at the moment, but as we saw right after COVID, when we were in a seller's market, buyers had a hard time asking for closing costs because you have so many people out here that are able to just pay cash and waive contingencies and all sort of stuff. It just kind of makes your offer a little bit less competitive. So you do want to keep that in mind when you are asking for closing costs, but it is not impossible. And I definitely recommend, if you can put that out there and you can ask, then yeah, definitely try and get your closing costs covered, because, the worst the seller can do is just not accept it. Now, I can't give you an exact number on what closing costs are going to be or an exact percentage. I know for my home, I end up paying just under 4% of the purchase price of the home for my closing costs, but it's going to vary depending on what lender you use, what title company you end up closing with, because they all charge different fees, and it's also going to depend on what area you're in, of course. And so just try and budget between 3 and 6%. I know it's kind of hard because that's a big jump from 3 to 6%, but that's usually what you can expect to pay for closing costs. I hope that list was helpful. Those are things that off the top of my head as a homeowner and as a realtor that I've seen buyers have to pay for when it comes to buying a home. And I think I pretty much covered all of the most common stuff. Again, it's going to depend. You may watch this video and be like, hey, I bought my house and I had to pay for this, this, and this. And someone else may watch the video and say, well, I bought my house and I didn't have to pay for that. And so use this list as a guide and to help you budget your expenses whenever you're looking at buying a home and just thinking about how much you need to be saving. And so thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.